Thanks very much for the chance to chat to you today. Wow, feedback. So I'm Simon. I'm the CEO and also the lead game designer at Frenzu. And it's a catchy title, 1 million downloads in a month. Okay. All right, thanks. It's a catchy title, 1 million downloads in a month. Really, it's all about how do you get your indie game off the ground. So let's jump into it. But before I do, I know it's kind of like a morning after probably a big night for a lot of people. So a bit of a public service announcement. On Wikipedia, this is the top 6 remedies for a hangover. I have no idea what the top 5 are. If you put it in front of me, I wouldn't know what it was. But apparently the 6th one is actually more alcohol. So we're in a bar, and I'm not going to be offended if you have to drink more alcohol to get over the alcohol from last night. So feel free and go ahead. OK, so let's start. I can't really see too many people, but how many here are indies actually developing games, small studios? OK, awesome, cool. So a majority of the crowd. Great. So this talk is all for those who have a small team. You know, maybe it's like 1 or 2 devs, or maybe it's like a team of 5, 10 people. But small teams, small budgets. We're not talking $1 million development and marketing budgets. And maybe you haven't got a game out before, or maybe you've got a very small install base, so you can't use that big cross-promotion engine from your own games. And who doesn't have a special friend at Apple that they can just say, hey, cool game, you got to check it out. I certainly don't have a friend like that at Apple. I'd like an intro, but I don't have one. But you do have a great game in development. And this is not a talk about how to make a great game. Great speakers have talked about that. This is more about how do you try to get it off the ground in your initial kind of launch activities. A little bit of background to set the context. So we do 3D games for women. So our brand is Miguel. We launched our first game 2 months ago. We're now at about 3 million downloads. It's generating good money. The company is profitable and growing. But we weren't always like that. So at the start of the year, we were a very small team. We're a team of, the core team was just 4 people. We're on the other side of the planet, well away from the market which we were after, which is the US. Our first game, we didn't have a track record, and at that time, we didn't have much funding at all. In fact, we kind of had ran out of funds at that stage. So subsequently, we've raised money and all those things. But this is about kind of the context for how you go about kind of releasing under a kind of resource-constrained situation. So let's start about the kind of through the design part of the game. So mirroring the last speaker, I think really important is to be unique. It's critical. I mean, how many Angry Birds clones can you name right now off the top of your head? Can anyone name 2? None? Angry Pigs. OK, 1. Angry Goats. Maybe there is. I bet you there's tons. I bet you there's 100 clones of Angry Birds. No one in the room remembers any of them because it's second. It's not unique. It doesn't stand out. So the key thing is to be unique. You've got to stand out from the clutter and do something really different. So we're doing 3D fashion. We were the first 3D fashion game on mobile when we launched. And surely there'll be others who come on after us. But we were unique in how we got our start. I really love Realm of the Mad Dogs. I mean, maybe there is before, but I hadn't seen a kind of a massive, ridiculously massively co-op fantasy bullet time MMO. I mean, it's just an awesome game with pixel graphics. It really stood out from the crowd. And love it or hate it, regardless of what you think about its current kind of longevity of the game mechanics, I mean, Song Pop is kind of the first social quiz music game, and it deserves the success it's getting. Because of that, because it's unique and it's first to do something different. So it's free. You have a choice about what you work on. So work on something that's a bit different. And not talking about Temple Run with pandas. That would be awesome. I'd love to play that maybe once. But I'd still revert back to Temple Run because that's the original thing. So think about how you'd be different. The next one is very much kind of in line with the last talk. Is personality. How many here played the game Stupid Zombies? Oh, OK, OK. So 1 lady has played it. I love that game. I really spend a lot of time. It's kind of like my brain dead, kind of kill 5 minutes in the toilet sort of game. And this game has a great personality, great character. Like, it's the simplest game. It's just a really simple geometry mechanic. But this character is just like so much personality. I mean, he's kind of like the Homer Simpson of like, of kind of like action stars. He's kind of like fat and, a little bit balding. And so he was the reason I played that game, actually, because he's just got great sound effects and great animation. Another example, a really simple game mechanic, a kind of pattern matching game called Occupied. But it got a whole kind of like community of fans because it had like a really good theme, which is all about kind of like the toilet and, picking out, do you go to the guys or the girls' toilet? And you do that under time pressure and go into the wrong one, and there's shrieks from the toilets. So it was just really well themed and had a lot of character to it. And I think that's another way to stand out with your game. Have a unique hook. So, we're talking about like press and the last question. How do you kind of like be different and how do you grab the attention? The way you do it is by having a hook and a kind of like a one-line summary of why this is different or why this is cool. So for us, one of the journalists really loved this whole kind of like, oh, this is Barbie for the iPad. Well, actually, it's not. I mean, we have a lot of like 30, 40-year-old women who are playing this game a lot. But sure, hey, that's a really cool hook, and it kind of, it conveys what this thing is about and what the ambition is behind it. So it's great. So I think it's good to have kind of like a unique hook that you can describe. If you can't describe it in one short sentence, it's too complicated, probably. Okay, so next, some more kind of like tactical things. Everyone talks about word of mouth. Word of mouth is so critical. It's the best possible way to go and spread your game, not chart rankings or anything like that. But how do you maximize word of mouth? So everyone talks about Facebook and Twitter, and I'll get onto that. But don't forget just like physical word of mouth. Like having, for example, we put our logo on the top of the screen so that whenever you're in the UI, you can actually just go look over the shoulder and see what the next person is playing next to you and say, oh, okay, they're playing Style Miguel. Just takes up a tiny bit of the UI, but it's kind of like fun. How many of you guys like put your kind of like game name on the UIs? Do you guys do that? Some? Couple? So it's certainly something that you can do and kind of like get a lot of advantage from. And we see that as well because there's a lot of people do word of mouth in families. And just being able to kind of like, it's easier to spark the conversation if it's already there and just say, oh, yeah, this is this game. So I highly recommend it. That was very helpful for us. And then, of course, all the online things. Open Graph, we're really heavy into Open Graph. We do all the Twitter integration. Open Graph has been great. Like whenever I log into Facebook, I see my girlfriend, see her latest scores and her latest progress in the game. And this is something that, I mean, it just takes a day to integrate and put it in and get it going. Why not do it when it can kind of help get the word out for free? Another example is I really like Tokaboka, the games for kids. Really high quality, creative entertainment. And whenever you take screenshots, they have a really nice kind of logo that's in there. So when people share it or blog about it or send pictures to friends of what they created, like in the funky hairdos for the bears, it appears there. And it's not done in a very gimmicky way. I think it kind of fits into the screenshot. So take advantage of these simple things. Okay, so there's some of the concepts during design. Let's talk about in the lead up towards launch. So you've got your game, you're kind of working on it, and it's getting towards the time where you want to get it out to people. So what things can you do? So I actually highly recommend to go and launch first on Android, to beta test it on Android. We did that, and we were really happy at that process. I know I'm in the minority. Most people will say, oh, put it on iOS first and then go to Android later if there's demand. I think it's the reverse. I think do beta first on Android. So to give you an idea, we put it on Android, and over the course of our beta, which was about 4 or 5 months, we did an extended beta. We launched it really early before features were complete. Like it wasn't playable at the start, and then we just iterate. So we got 500,000 downloads just without doing any marketing spend, without doing any marketing activity. We just literally put it out there, and it just steadily got users, and it got us lots of iteration and feedback. I love Android because it's so flexible. You can put push code like 3 or 4 times a day, like we were doing at some stages. You can run a whole lot of like testing. You can go and do analytics tracking. Very flexible. You can have multiple accounts, and then you can go and move accounts from one account, move apps from one account to another account, and you can rename apps, and you can go and change the thumbnails at any time. So it's just a really flexible thing. And the good thing about this is that it forces you to treat Android as a first-class citizen. And I spent half my time in Hong Kong, half in San Francisco. In Hong Kong, Android is winning the battle. I mean, there's just Samsung, Galaxy S3, and all those phones. I think that Android is very important to pay attention to, and this is one way to ensure it. And also, you're protecting, ensuring your commercial launch when you're ready to actually launch on iOS. You know that it's going to be a pretty good product by that stage. A/B testing, a lot has been talked about in the last couple of days. So it's a chance to kind of tune the major parameters. You can do it yourself. So we took 3 days and built our own kind of A/B test framework, or you can use an off-the-shelf like Swerve or others. And one point, though, and we were burned by this a couple of times, is don't accept statistically insignificant results. You know, there's like a habit that we have of saying, oh, 12 people like, you know, retention was better, you know, 12 people got better retention on that option compared to like, you know, 7. But, you know, that's not a big data point. I mean, make sure that you kind of just do your calculations, see if it's, you know, significant yet or not before you kind of move on and conclude the result of that A/B test. I've seen that before. I've literally, my background is in kind of like web, you know, optimization. I've seen that before. You run a test and, you know, one day in, oh, it's a clear winner. And then by the second day, it's actually a different result. So just take your time and get good results through the A/B testing. Publisher deal. If you can get a good one, then great. I mean, it's a good way to get off the ground. It gives you the marketing resources that you don't have yourself, especially if you have a small or constrained budget. Great if you can go and get advances, minimum guarantees, you know, upfront marketing credits, without having to sell your soul. You know, to be frank, when we were in early stage of development, I went out and contacted all the major publishers, and I got rejected by every single one. So none of the publishers liked the game. And you know, and maybe that's just because it's new, or it's different, or it's a different demographic from what they're used to. So I wouldn't get too hung up if, you know, they don't necessarily like it. If your players in your beta testing are saying they like it, then that's what you should kind of like go with. But by all means, you know, if you get partners who are good, and some of the social platforms as well, you know, the Grees and Papayas of the world, they can be really good to work with to kind of get your first kind of start with your first couple of games. So we ended up self-publishing, but certainly that's a good option if you can get a good deal. The next thing is, so how many of you guys actually get a trailer done? Can I just? Okay, cool. So it's at least half of it. So this is probably for the other half then. A trailer is just a no-brainer. A trailer is cheap. Like it literally cost us $180. We got a live action, you know, a live actress going in, like, you know, and doing the video capture of her. It was a small team in Poland who actually did the work for us. And it was great. I mean, we put it on Google Play. If you're familiar with Google Play, you can actually put your YouTube video in there, and a lot of people will go and, you know, check it out. And it just saves time. If you're going and talking to press or something, they don't have time to go and install a game. You know, they'll just see the YouTube video and then decide if they want to go and install the game. So highly recommend to do a trailer, and you can make it look really good. And it only took us like 3 days to actually do it. Screenshots are the same thing. You put all the hard work to making the design and the GUI look great. You know, you might as well just put a nice caption and make it look good. This is a really good screenshot from Stardom, published by Glue. And I really like how they've kind of like done it in the nice theme. And I don't think it took a lot of work. I don't think it probably took a couple of hours to kind of make it look nice, but it has a big impact because that's seen by, you know, literally millions of people. And they'll decide whether to install based on that. This I wanted to put up more for the process rather than the specifics. So when you're about to get ready to launch your app, you have a lot of choice about things like categories, parameters, keywords, things like that. And the key thing is don't necessarily use your gut, because your gut can be wrong. Go with, you know, an analytical point of view. So for example, categories. Categories used to matter a lot. I know there's changes now in the app stores, but regardless, categories is something else. Go through the process. So for example, in our case, when we were looking at the categories, we said, okay, you can find out like what's the relative competition amongst the different categories. You can find out what's the relative like, revenue being spent amongst the different categories. And then you can kind of like combine those to say, what's your biggest bang for buck? Which categories are going to give you the best impact for relatively the least competition? And particularly if you have like a choice of different categories, your game, like our game literally could have fallen into any of this. Some kids play it, so it's a kids game. For the family, it has a casual game in it, so it's arcade. It's a fashion puzzler, so it's a puzzle game. It's simulation, involving strategy as you kind of like improve your career, and then you're role-playing as a stylist. So we could have put it in any of these, but then at the end of the day, we did these calculations and said, okay, role-play is the best bang for buck. That's our primary category. Secondary category, strategy. And that worked really well for us, this sort of approach. So ignore the kind of like specifics, but just the kind of like philosophy of like doing an analytical view of your choices. Same for icons. So we had 64 different icon variants, pretty fast to generate. I mean, we just go into our kind of like our engine and just go and show the different characters and take different screenshots. And we went through 64 different variants, and you know what? The one that won was totally, none of us in the team like thought that one would win, but it turned out to be the winner, which was actually like the three girls together. You know, everyone thought like the face, emotional connection, you know, have the glittery eyes, and that would definitely be the winner. And I had people telling me that, but the numbers didn't say that. Like for our sort of game, you know, having kind of full body, multiple avatars was the winner. So you just never know on these things until you do it. Same thing for name and description. You can do SEO work, you know, web and mobile tools to help you do that. We A/B tested our name. So Style Miguel, which is the name of our game, wasn't the original name. It was something else, and then we A/B tested it and found a better name, so we went with that name. If you have your first game, or if you're an indie, then you're flexible with these things. You know, someone like an EA can't really muck around with The Sims. The Sims is The Sims, and of course, it's a well-known brand. You want to use it. But for the rest of us, we can definitely do those things. Translation. A lot of devs don't actually translate their descriptions, even if their game is not translated. I mean, it just literally costs a few $100s to get it translated to all of the different languages. And it just takes, you know, literally takes like 12 hours. Why not do that? And there's sites that you can do that. Just drop me an email if you want to know some suggestions for sites. So let's talk a bit about the actual launch itself and the process. So this is another example, like the category of this changes all the time. This is kind of out of date and probably in a few months. But consider like things like pricing strategy. So we kind of found this by accident. I mean, some friends had told us that if you do the price drop thing, that it would get traffic. We actually priced it originally at $2.99 because we didn't want people to download it. We wanted to have it in one country at $2.99 so we could go and test it ourselves. But when we dropped it down to 0 because we were ready to launch, we actually found that had a big uptake in traffic. So if you want to get your first 10,000 installs, it's a pretty easy way to do that at literally no cost. And it gets picked up by all of these kind of sale apps and so forth, and it just has like a good impact. Now, you've got to be aware of the impact. Like, we didn't expect people to download the paid version, but they did, which is having a good icon and description and so forth. So we had a lot of drama dealing with upset customers who saw that it went free. I mean, that took a lot of cycles. As a small team, that took a lot of cycles. So be aware of this sort of thing and be aware of the trade-offs and risks. And we made all of those customers whole. Like, we kind of like made sure that they were kind of taken care of, and they were happy in the end, but it just took a lot of cycles. So just be aware of the trade-offs in these type of things. Okay, next one. So the free app a day sites, they're potentially good, but you've got to be able to track their impact. Like, we did a free app of the day, and we kind of think it worked, but it was kind of expensive, and we're not really sure because they didn't have tracking. If I was to do it again, I would go with probably the other guys who have better analytics and better tracking. And also, the other thing is don't be shy in asking them to do it for free. Like, if it's a genuinely interesting game, some of these guys will just do it. If they have like a quiet day and they want to go and put something interesting for their players, they'll consider doing it for free. We had like 2 or 3 sites where we just contacted them, and they said, yeah, cool, seems like interesting. We haven't seen one of those before, so yeah, we'll put it up for free. We don't have any paid kind of paid placements on those days. So just go out and be proactive and ask. And also, if you are going to invest in this, ask yourself the question, does the demographic match? Have they had like games targeted to a similar sort of player which have done well in the past? And the last thing is, so I'm from Australia. I don't know if this word is popular in the US, like dodgy, but it's kind of like a dodgy filter. Like, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is dodgy. So, if they're promising to go and get you all this like chart position, I mean, just stay away from that stuff. I mean, if you're in it for the long haul and you want to have a good business, you don't want to do any stuff like that. And certainly we didn't want to go down that sort of route. Low-hanging fruit, and I kind of put this up. This is a graph of actually like, relationship between subcategory and kind of like download rate. And this is just kind of an example, but the key thing is here is like, you can use this to your benefit in other markets, for example. Say you don't want to go into the US or it's too expensive or something like that. You can go in smaller markets or just target specific platforms or categories. And algorithms change all the time, but the key thing is to kind of like be aware and on top of these things so you can grab these kind of like low-hanging fruit. So we did a very minimal kind of like spend in certain countries and we got huge returns from that, like, 30, 40 to 1 returns on that. So it's definitely worthwhile. One thing I wish we did, but we didn't do, is cross-promotion. So just banding up with friends and helping each other cross-promote. We're in the process of setting those things up now, but that would have been great to have that. And certainly a lot of people have had good experiences with that for launching. Be nimble. The other thing is like see new platform opportunities. Often if you're first or you're early to something new, chances are you get a very good deal or you get in like at the ground up. So we were one of the first public kind of like in-app purchase games on Amazon. We actually hit #1 for about 3 days, 4 days we held #1, like, better than Angry Birds, everything else. We spent like, at that stage, $1,000 on that sort of activity, and we were like literally #1 in the charts for a few days, and then Amazon really liked the game and ended up featuring it. But the key thing is like, it was just because you're time to market, like you're first in a platform, a new platform. There's lots of new things, Facebook, some of these, I'm really excited about some of these communication apps, launching app stores. Windows 8, I'm going to be there on launch day if I can. I saw something last night that's very interesting, so there's always opportunities, just grab them. Other app stores, and I'll just go through these quickly. One key thing we got burned by this is to have all your kind of like updates ready in advance. Don't just say, oh, I'll ship the game and then I'll go and work on the next content. Have all that stuff prepared because you'll be busy doing other stuff through the game. And then the last slide is, don't forget social media. And the best way to do this is through interns. The way I see it is, and I kind of joke with the interns, it's like, hey, you guys, if it was a boring internship job, you'd be doing Facebook, blogging, Pinterest anyway. So why not just do it for your job? And they said, yeah, cool, that sounds good. And it's a good chance to do some SEO in all of the stuff that you put out there. So these are our amazing interns from the States in Hong Kong, 2 of them, and 1 in San Francisco. So that's really it. Hopefully there's 1 or 2 things that are interesting. So the key summary is be unique, be different. That's the main thing, the main takeaway. Stay up to date, keep up to date with changes, and then grab the low-hanging fruit where you see them. And this is all about getting off the ground. Once you're off the ground, everything opens up and you've got a lot more things that you can do and scale up. But this is just kind of getting the first steps to get there. So thanks very much. Thank you. Any time for a question? Or?
Yeah, we have time for 2 questions. Boy, you really can't see anything up here, huh?
Yes.
I see 1.
Yep.
Over there.
Thank you very much for the presentation. You mentioned that to pick up a publishing deal if you can find a good one. What in your personal experience would you consider a good deal?
I think a good deal is firstly someone who has the right demographic fit for you guys. So it's going to match the target audience. It's someone who kind of like believes in the potential of it. And so you have to be careful of publishers who just say, they just take a shotgun approach. They'll just take in everyone, and then they'll just see what works, and then just kind of like burn you if it doesn't work. So you want to go for like a partner who kind of like gets it and has a good alignment with you. and then they'll work together on the success of that together. So things you look for is like joint involvement in kind of like, reviewing designs and things like that, and a willingness to kind of like put some investment in themselves.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We got time for one more question. Anybody at all? No? Burning question? Simon's love life? There's
Yep.
one right there.
What love life?
White shirt back there.
So I'm sorry if this has been asked before, but how long was your development cycle for Dress Me Girl?
Sure, that's a great question. So our development cycle, so we were doing 3D on the web before, and then we transitioned to mobile. So this game took us a little bit longer. It took us about a good 6-9 months to port and optimize the 3D tech onto mobile. The actual game itself probably took about 4 or 5 months. But now our cycle's a bit faster, so the next game's coming out, it's probably about a 3.5-month development cycle.
Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you.